So it seems as more and more information about the attempted assassination is coming out, drip by drip, it is only seeming to be worse and worse for the Secret Service and the local police presence in Butler, Pennsylvania. If it is really just incompetence here, then the amount of stupidity and dropping the ball that had to have taken place would be legendary. But that of course begs the question, could it just all possibly be bumbling stupidity here, or was there someone else or someones somewhere down the chain of command that helped to make this happen? Now there's no evidence or proof of that, but this whole scenario is just so absurd and ridiculous, it just makes you wonder. So here's what we know so far. Thomas Crooks was spotted on the roof by law enforcement nearly 30 minutes prior to the actual shooting. Thomas Crooks was spotted on a roof by law enforcement, again, 30 minutes before the attempted assassination of Donald Trump would take place. Yeah, 30 minutes prior. He was spotted on the roof of a building with a clear sightline to President Trump. And yet, law enforcement didn't confront him. Why? Don't know. Did they call it in? Not sure. And if not, how come? Why didn't the Secret Service take steps to make sure that the building was secured? Especially if it was called in, what was anyone doing? And more importantly, why was Donald Trump even allowed to take the stage if there was the possibility that there might be someone on the roof with a sightline to the president? These are the boneheaded questions that the Secret Service needs to be answering here. And if that weren't bad enough, after the first sighting, there was the second sighting, 26 minutes before Crooks would open fire. He was spotted at least twice by members of the Emergency Services Unit team from Beaver County. And yet again, not engaged, not confronted. I mean, come on here. What is going on? Trump should never, ever have been allowed to even exit the vehicle before they had secured that area. But while they didn't confront him, don't worry, my friends, one of the Beaver County cops took a picture of Crooks. What good did that do? I don't know, but again, nothing else was done about Crooks. Now, the Secret Service, as you can imagine, has been trying to slough off responsibility for this giant security failure onto local law enforcement. They have done this by indirectly trying to put the blame on the local law enforcement for the security breach. They've been highlighting that, well, local police were responsible for securing the exterior of the fairground. Sure. Why, they were only responsible for the interior, even though the Secret Service is the one responsible for all levels of security here. They get to decide who, what, where, and how security for the president is put together. So naturally, they were called onto the carpet on this through social media and even from some news outlets. So they've done a little bit of backtracking. They put out a statement saying this on Twitter, or X. Our agency, composed of dedicated professionals, many from state and local departments, cannot fulfill our mission without the support of courageous police officers. We are deeply grateful to the officers who ran towards danger to locate the gunman, and to all our local partners for their unwavering commitment. Any news suggesting that the Secret Service is blaming local law enforcement for Saturday's incident is simply not true. That's interesting. Now, weighing into all of this, U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle, not to be confused with a beetle, says the buck stops with her. But that's all there's to it. She's not going to take any real accountability, and she's planning to stay on as director.
Director of the United States Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle, speaks exclusively with ABC News, taking responsibility for that stunning breakdown in security.
This is an event that should have never happened.
Who is most responsible for this happening?
What I would say is that the Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the former president.
So the buck stops with you?
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service. It was unacceptable, and it's something that shouldn't happen again.
Yeah, no duh.
Minutes after Trump took the stage Saturday in front of thousands of people, gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks wounding the former president and 3 others before a Secret Service counter-sniper took him out.
I'm being told that the shooter was actually identified as a potential
threat.
Person of suspicion. Units started responding to seek that individual out.
Again, if that's the case, why did you allow Donald Trump to take the stage? when you weren't sure that it was secure? I'm sorry. No excuses here.
Unfortunately, with the rapid succession of how things unfolded, by the time that individual was eventually located, they were on the rooftop. And
again, she's lying here. 30 minutes. You had 30 minutes.
Were able to fire off at the former.
Should not have allowed Trump out. Period.
Obviously.
Shock and
For the
concern.
former president.
Investigators now trying to determine whether roof access had been properly locked down.
Good thing she had that shock and concern, right? Again, what crack is this woman smoking? Unsafe? I'm sorry. Let's look at where her counter snipers were. This ex-user cracks me up. Here's the bad slope, where you can't have any snipers protecting, and here's the good slope. Come on, Kimberly, what kind of nonsense lies is this?
Was made to secure the building from inside.
Cheatle says the Secret Service was responsible for the inner perimeter of the rally, where Trump was, but local police were responsible for the outer perimeter, where the gunman was located.
It off on outer
Washington lawmakers
perimeter police.
demanding answers, calling on the Secret Service director to appear before Congress.
We will be transparent both internally with my own folks and externally with members of Congress and with the American public. That's what the public deserves.
The President and Homeland Security Secretary said today they had 100% confidence in you, but there are some members of Congress calling on you to resign.
I appreciate the Secretary's comments, and we're going to continue to be transparent and communicate with people.
You plan to stay on? Absolutely.
I do plan to stay on.
Wonderful. Now, it turns out, my friends, that the roof's slope was less than 10 degrees, which is nothing. In fact, again, if we look at these side-by-side photos of the counter sniper and Crooks, it actually looks like the slope where Crooks is on is not nearly as bad. This alone should be grounds for her immediate termination, let alone everything else that her Secret Service botched that day. This dim-witted, DEI-obsessed director has no business being anywhere near her position, and yet she was placed there, and as of today is still in her position of power. Now, obviously, there are going to be ongoing investigations. Multiple investigations have already been launched to examine the security failures. This includes an independent review panel announced by the Secret Service. Right. And then Congress is also planning on doing their own inquiries and hearings. And then the FBI is doing their investigation into the incident as a potential domestic terrorism act. So there's going to be a lot of increased scrutiny at the Secret Service. This is the biggest security failure that they've had since the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan all the way back in 1981. Now, this takes me back to that initial question. Was it just a bunch of bumbling morons that just didn't secure the most obvious place to secure and somehow didn't stop some lone gunman? Or is there something more sinister happening here? The sad reality is both are within the realm of possibilities here. The incompetence possibility is very real, considering the DEI-style focus that the current administration has had in its hiring practices. It's quite possible that Director Cheatle hired a bunch of staff or put a bunch of people into positions of authority who were incompetent, that had no business being there. So it's possible that all the bumbling mistakes made by everyone involved could all just be coincidences. But I'll be honest, though, and this to some might seem like a hot take, but for all the stars to align, for Crooks to have made it to the roof, be there, have a rangefinder, and be spotted 30 minutes prior to actually opening firing, then leave the roof, and then come back, and yet, despite all of this, magically not be confronted, not even once, by anyone within the local police or Secret Service. Add to that the Secret Service doing nothing to secure the area, to ensure the safety of the president, allowing him to leave the motorcade to come on stage, despite knowing that there was someone wandering around potentially in an area where you have line of sight of the president. Couple this with the Secret Service counter sniper agent having eyes on Thomas Crooks, or at least his position, a full 40 seconds before the shooting began, including doing absolutely nothing until after the 20-year-old managed to squeeze off a bunch of rounds. All of this just seems implausible. Could it happen? that you have so many bumbling, incompetent people working security? So much so that all the stars align to allow a single 20-year-old man to nearly take out a former president of the United States? I mean, I suppose, but to me, this just feels way too coincidental. There are just so many steps along the way that had to align perfectly to allow Crooks to get his shot off. It borderlines unbelievable. And the fact that the Crooks character, this young kid, is a ghost with no online presence, for Zoomers, people under the age of 20, to not be on social media is already highly unusual. So color me deeply suspicious about all of this. And I do not trust the Secret Service nor the FBI to engage in this investigation honestly. And look, there is no proof or evidence that this was anything other than just a bunch of idiots not being able to handle security. Okay? But I just can't wrap my head around this. So the question remains, was there someone else helping Crooks? Or was this really all just an episode of Lemony Snicket's and a series of unfortunate events that we all got to watch live? Either way, heads need to roll at the Secret Service. Of that, I am sure. And the best place to start is right at the top. And I'm talking about you, Kimberly. You need to be gone. Period. And I'm going to leave it there. From the To Be Frank show, my friends, I am Adrian. Thanks for watching this episode with me. I'll see you all in the next video.